Research. Sometimes it flat out sucks. It can take a long time, it can cost a lot of money, and when you have enough data to arrive at a conclusion, it may turn out to be something you weren't expecting to get when you started researching in the first place. However, that research is absolutely necessary for furthering knowledge. It's absolutely vital if you wish to engage in the sciences. If you want Nibiru or Planet X or anything along those lines to become at all scientific, then you need to do the research.
You make a bold claim, somebody else has to be able to go out and test it.
What you should be doing is telling us what your hypothesis is, if you can agree on whether Nibiru is a planet near the Sun or a dwarf star on the edges of the solar system or whatever. Then how are you going to test that out? How are you going to gather and analyse the data you need? And once you know all of that, then you can test it until you finally come to a solid conclusion. Then somebody else can come along, grab your hypothesis, provided you manage to get one together, use the same tools to test it with, gather and analyse their own data in the same way, and test it until they come to a conclusion too.
If you don't have the data, that other people can then go to their labs and run the experiment just like you did. If they can't get the same results, there's something wrong there. And in science, we require that.
Only after passing all of this, only when lots of people reach the same conclusion as you, do you have something worth looking at and worth investigating some more. Yes, that's right, further research. It doesn't stop at the conclusion. What research is not, of course, is dismissing all the evidence because you disagree with it. That's called willful ignorance. I was recently featured in a video concerning how to defeat a debunker. Incidentally, calling me or anybody else with similar views and videos a debunker essentially means you are defining Nibiru as bunk in the first place. If that's how you want to play, so be it. This bunk of yours deserves to be ripped apart and actually researched by someone. It was suggested that I remove my nose from the debunker's handbook and that you will never make any such new discovery with your nose buried in a book. You mean I won't learn the original meaning for the word Nibiru by looking it up in the dictionary? Books and stored knowledge are essential. You need to have a grasp of what is already known, because if you do not know the basics, how are you supposed to explain your claims? Take the recent fracas regarding stereo imagery. My approach was to look up how the instrument works, to see where the satellite is at any given point, to see the orbit of Venus in 3 dimensions, to research common image artifacts found in the same data, to ask those who work on that data what the processes are, how they get the data, what timescales are involved, and so on. But your approach is to ignore all of that and insist that it is still an unknown object, like you've said from the start. It is implied in this How to Defeat a Debunker video that all of the research I and anybody else can do was actually useless. Because all that research shows you something that you as a believer do not like, it is therefore wrong. And yet you have the nerve to suggest that you have done the research, but do not show what research you have done. Doesn't that strike anyone as a little strange? How there are a multitude of sources that support the view that this is Venus, but all of these sources are ignored and the same unproven nonsense is said again and again until the debunkers go away. Well, I'm sorry. If your evidence is all in your head or your heart, whereas ours is testable, verifiable, and free for anyone to check for themselves, I think we can begin to see where each of us stands, and how important research is in separating fact from fiction. Research is not optional here. It is required for anyone to take Nibiru claims seriously. What I do is take a proper look at the claims, find out where they come from, and find out what we actually know about the evidence in the claim. All of what I do can be done by anybody else, and more often than not, it doesn't take a whole lot of reading to learn of something contrary to the claims. In short, I do the research that you don't bother to do yourselves. Call it debunking if you want, but even doing that is doing research. Even debunking something shows you what it really is, a load of old bunk. When believers show us skeptics some research that makes us question what is known to science, then we'll take note of what they have to offer. But saying that you disagree with the overwhelming evidence and then not offering anything in return that supports your view is not research. It's nonsense.
Have you thought about that? Have you thought, what else could be explaining this? Because if you don't do it, somebody else will, usually with great glee, in a published public forum.